Welcome to Snapverse616. This is our inaugural first episode. I'm Smokey, and my partner here is Invoke.
Hello.
He's the one who got me into Marvel Snap in the first place. So I'll let him do a little, tell you about who we are and what we do, and then we'll crack into it.
Yeah, I'm a person that just generally likes card-based strategy games in particular. Like, I grew up playing like Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Pokemon trading card game. Um, and then in recent years got into Magic the Gathering, but fell out of it because
Magic's
of
fun.
the cost associated to Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, fuck that.
The fact that they keep like destroying your decks every few months because there's a new set that comes out and they want you to buy the new set.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when Marvel Snap got announced and it was revealed that the developer behind it was
Yeah.
one of the original devs behind Hearthstone, which is another game that I experimented with, um, I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. So I instantly signed up for the like pre-registry and didn't get a beta, unfortunately.
Me
But
either.
it is what it is. Signed up for the pre-registry, and as soon as the game launched, I started playing it and fell in love with it. It was like the games are quick. I can play it on my iPad in bed. I can play it on my PC. I primarily play on the iPad, um, and I don't the decks were small enough that it's like even if they do change the meta, they put new expansions in. It's like
That.
my deck's not going to get destroyed because it's only 12 cards,
That.
and I started doing really well in it because it's at most a 7 turn game. You only have 3 locations you can lay 4 cards
Yeah.
at. So it was like knowing how Smokey was with card games because I played them before in Magic the Gathering. I was like, you kind of need to check this out. You need to check this out. Um, and then what do you know what? Like the next day, I got a message from me like, yeah, I'm addicted and it's your fault. So hence why we're starting this podcast.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Because we're both kind of sort of addicted to this game. Um, I would say that neither one of us are like pros, but we're both decent at the game.
Yeah, and I like to learn. That's really my thing. I like to learn, so I'm always trying to learn from like other Snap players and community members, and like that was part of why I wanted to do this because now I can be like, hey, who's got info? What's the info? I like to learn. I have info, and it's like kind of like a forum for being able to share stuff and have people be able to be comfortable for that. And another motivation was some people, other streamers I've watched have commented like there are Marvel Snap discords and things like that, but it's like with other games you usually get one that sticks out aside from the official one that's like people usually like congregate there and that's where they get their information and stuff. I know
Yeah,
when I played like Warcraft, monks had the Peak of Serenity discord, something like that. And so I know people were like looking for stuff like that with Snap too, and so I'm like, well, double duty, we can kind of get that going too, like not necessarily Discord, but get like the community going and talking about stuff, and like this person knows this and this person knows that, kind of thing. So that was kind of part of my motivation.
and I've noticed that it's already starting. Like you're branching out to other streamers.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't really dabbled in the streaming of it yet, just because I'm not consistent with my streams. Um, for medical reasons and various other reasons.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still playing the game daily. Like I don't think I've missed a day yet where I haven't played at least a handful of games. Even today, like setting up for the podcast, like well, you were getting things like final touches for your like notes and stuff. Like I played what four
Yeah.
or five games
Yeah.
in the 20 minutes that.
Kicked somebody's butt too, from what I understood.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about this game is like games take what a max of 5 minutes and
Yeah,
then you're on the next one,
yeah.
and that's if you're taking your time. Like that's if everybody in the game is like being strategic.
Especially on like turn 5 and 6, which a lot of people
Yeah.
do.
More so once you get to the higher ranks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's like for me, I'm kind of in the middle ranks right now. Like I think I'm 45 because I've been on a heck of a losing streak.
I'm hoping
Um,
to crack Vibranium myself.
the highest I've hit is like 53, which is what flat. That's flat, right? Pretty sure that's
Yes,
flat.
yes. 60's Diamond, 70's Vibranium. Then you got Omega, I believe. Then something and Infinite.
Yeah, yeah. The highest I've hit is 53, which I'm coming from Magic, and when I was really deep into Magic, I made a run to Mythic. For those of you that don't know Magic, Mythic is like the top rank. So it's like I know if I devote enough time to this game, I will get there with Marvel Snap as well. Um, but I'm being very cautious of like not burning myself out with it. Um,
Yeah,
because
that's
I am
fair.
really enjoying it and I'm enjoying the strategy of it. It's very much like poker, and
Yep.
we'll
And we'll
talk a bit
definitely talk
more
about
about
that later.
that
Yep.
in the coming segments. But yeah,
First up, though,
um,
we have news. All the new
yes,
stuff.
we
We got
do.
new decks and all that stuff. So why
Yeah.
don't we take a second? We'll go to that. And we're at the weekly Bugle segment here. That's our news. So the first thing we were going to talk about is the new token shop, and I think the first thing to do is maybe cover the details. And basically, right now you can get older cards for like 1,000 collector's tokens. If you already reached collector level 500, they will give you 3,000 collector's tokens. If you haven't reached it yet, when you get there, you will be awarded 3,000. That's good enough if you just save them all to buy one of the tier, the lower tier of the new pool of cards. Guys
Tier
like
four, I
She-Hulk,
believe.
Absorbing Man, etc. Those kind of cards. But 6,000 you can get the big hitters, Shuri, I believe Galactus, and like Thanos, those kind of
Thanos.
cards.
Yeah, yeah.
But the cool part is I think you get one card that you can potentially purchase every like some few amount of hours. I think like 8, if
Every
I'm not
eight, I
mistaken,
believe. I
and
believe it.
I think it's 8. But at any rate, you can pin it if you like it and don't have the collector's tokens at the time, and it'll stay in your shop until such time as you decide, oh, I'm gonna buy that now, and or you decide, forget it, I've seen something better, I want something better. But I think the big concern people had was it going to be pay to win, because it's a second, you know currency on top of the credits we already have going, and a third currency when you consider gold as a means to obtain credits and season XP. So I think people were concerned, but for me it's like you can save time and money just by going for a card you need. And if you get the one up there that you want and pin, I know you're looking for Maria Hill, right? And you haven't had kind of luck with that, but
Yeah, Maria Hill and Luke Cage are the two that I'm waiting for.
yeah, and I,
Um,
I would like Shuri.
they go well with my like go-to deck, which is my one cost deck, which
That's true.
again we'll talk about uh, in later segments. But
Yeah. And then they have like, I think people had a concern that, because I remember there was a video circulating. I didn't watch it myself. I know people were like linking it in chats and talking about it, and I didn't watch it because I gathered that the gist of it was someone was saying that it was going to cost like 500 and something dollars every time they release cards to get them all, and blah 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 blah. But there's no direct way to actually spend money on collector's tokens aside from right now. There's that like really spendy Apocalypse pack, which, unless you're a uber fan of Apocalypse and that particular art, I don't see the value in it because you do get some collector's tokens. Sure, it's like I think 3,000, but um, that's the only way to obtain them, and it's only enough to get even half of one of the biggest cards. So you'd have to be paying $100 for that or so, and I just don't see that as being a big threat to the ability to win. So I think a lot of that pay to win talk was kind of people were just scared that a game they loved was about to like get done dirty.
Go the Hearthstone road essentially, because Hearthstone is very much spend real money to buy packs, at least from
Yeah,
my experience.
yeah, and I know with Magic that's a big turnoff too for a lot of people. Is
Yeah,
like the entry into it is a steep cost if you want to actually compete a lot of times, and that can be problematic. And so I think this was a good ad. This was a good addition. I mean, all the other stuff stays. All the other gold and currency formats stay. And then on top of that,
personally, I think personally I think it was a great ad because this is a way for you to get cards that you specifically want,
yeah,
and
and you could actually
you don't need
avoid
to waste
having to feel like spending money on collector levels to randomly get it. Yeah. If anything, it makes it less pay to win. But yeah, speaking of things that were added, we also got the whole new season of like power cosmic type cards, the whole new pools of those that center around Thanos and his power stones, which are synergistic 1/1 cards with different effects. And like, in order to actually get Thanos to max, I think at 18 um, power, you have to play all the stones, all of them, and that can be tricky. But for the first cards that we actually have, there's 10 in the new Series 4. So we have a Series 4 and a Series 5. So we're coming off Pool 1, 2, and 3. So you could consider this, Pool 4 and 5, even though it's more like Series 4 and 5. I'm not really sure if they're going to be Pool 4 and 5 or if it's considered Pool 4. But from what we've read, there's 10 new Series 4 cards, and they're considered rare by the developers, and they're 3,000 tokens. And the first one we're going to talk about is She-Hulk.
yes we are, which is a 4/3, right? Four
Yeah,
cost 3 power.
yeah. 4 costs 5 power, actually.
Four, yeah,
Yeah,
four
5
cost
power.
5 power. Yeah.
Yeah, and she costs 1 less for each energy spent on the previous turn. So if you don't, spend any of your turn 3 on anything, she costs 1 and you still get your turn 3. Which obviously that's kind of counterintuitive for that specific play, but you can make it work with certain things. I know
I mean, it would
Sunspot,
work well with Sunspot, right?
yeah, Sunspot, because skipping turns gives him plus
Yeah.
plus whatever energy skipped each turn. If you're gonna go that route though, you might want to armor up in your deck. Just since you're skipping the turn 3, armor's a turn 2 play that could protect Sunspot if he's doing that work. Normally, I don't recommend playing Sunspot on turn 1, but in this particular case, if you were rocking a She-Hulk deck that relied on Sunspot and armor, I would absolutely drop Sunspot on turn 1, even though there's no benefit, despite the fact you're kind of telegraphing it and saying, come kill me over here. It does make Elektra a bit of a threat on turn 2 if you don't reveal first, but that's really the only issue.
You just said something that I find very interesting, given that we both sometimes run a Sunspot deck. I know this is not a rundown, but I'm very curious. You just said that you don't often recommend playing Sunspot turn 1.
Yeah.
Um, why is that?
Well, if you play Sunspot on turn 1, you get no additional benefit because you spent the energy. So there are circumstances like if there's a location in play that reduces the card cost to where he's 0, okay, well then he's going to be a 0/2 when you play him because +1. But on turn 1, all you're really doing is going, I'm over here, I'm going to buff myself, please kill me. And so I really try not to play him on turn 1. But if I play him on
What?
turn 2, he
What you get
buffs.
an extra?
Go ahead. Sorry.
but you would get an extra turn of buffs if you play him turn one, because you could buff him turn two, three, four, five, and six theoretically,
I
right?
mean, theoretically, but that's assuming. So that's assuming a lot. Um, that's assuming I'm going to play Sunspot in a way that doesn't get armor played, or that I draw exactly what I want for 3 and 4. And since you're skipping 3 here, you're not really trying to draw for 3. You're already going to buff them here for 3 on turn 3. So that's why you can play him turn 1 because it doesn't really matter. I know playing him turn 2, you don't get 2. You just get the 1 on him. So he's not a 3, he's a 2. But the threat of cards to destroy Sunspot or counter Sunspot because you played him early can be problematic. Not only that, but playing him early, they know, oh, that card's going to be big later, so they're going to, it doesn't have as much effect on turn 1 as turn 2 or 3 playing him, purely because the, you don't get the kind of like surprise element out of him, where it's like, surprise bitch, I'm playing him over here, and that means you're going to have to cover this instead of this thing over there. Whereas if you play them on turn 1, they're like, all right, I got to counter that spot. I got a plan. And it kind of takes him out of the whole game by playing him on turn 1. But I think what was the next one that She-Hulk works with?
The next one that works with She-Hulk is we have Sabretooth listed here.
Right, and that's he always costs 3 to start. Where She-Hulk can be less. Sabretooth can be moved if you kill him and replace at 0 cost, but She-Hulk has like 1 more power but no move potential on her own kind of thing. So I'd say they're like comparative cards, like if you're trying to figure out what kind of deck to build. I wouldn't say they're necessarily synergistic because of Sabretooth's cost.
Yeah, so like if you want to play a movement deck, then Sabretooth is the way to go. But if you're not a movement deck,
Yeah, exactly. Then you can use
She-Hulk.
She-Hulk. Or if if you're trying for a different plan altogether, um, where, for example, say you're not running Infinite, where you would skip a turn on turn 5 and buff a Sunspot to play an Infinite. But with She-Hulk, what you could do is take a really strong turn 5 card, like a Gamora, and you could combine Gamora with the fact that you usually have a good idea where they're going to drop a card on turn 6. So
Yeah, turn six for
if you're
sure.
good at that gamble there, you can figure out, haha, that's a 12. But either way, you would get what I think the 7 from her. Without that, is that what it is? She's 7. Can't remember.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah,
And so either way, if you're able to drop her and She-Hulk and you're wrong, it's still a 12. And then if you're like on turn 6, right? But if you're right, oh, that's a 17. Now you got a stew going. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty good. So I could see Sabretooth in that strategy working in this deck because you could play him on turn 3, totally disguise your She-Hulk because people are going to think skip turn 3 She-Hulk. You know what I mean? Like everybody's going to be thinking that the way they think skip turn 5 Infinite. And so you could use it as a juke. Play Sabretooth turn 3 and
big
be like,
brain
I
play
don't
for
have a
sure.
She-Hulk. What was that?
Big brain play there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a kind of like a mind game right there for that one. And then what was the next one we had up? You want to talk about that one?
The next one
After
was
Sabretooth.
Miles Morales, which is a 10 cost one if you move a card prior
Right.
to playing them. Uh, Works great on early, but costs if you have a one cost card like Nightcrawler, which could make Miles Morales playable on turn three at the earliest. Um, leaving two energy available to play something else or buff a sunspot if you have a sunspot.
Right, right,
Uh, Whereas with She-Hulk, it requires a specific early draw.
right. Like Miles Morales, if you say had Vision turn 5 and moved him, then Miles Morales is a one cost card, and you could be in a similar situation with a Gamora play that you would be with a She Hulk. Um, and that could allow you to kind of decide if you're gonna like. So a lot of times you try to have an early combo and a late combo, and I feel like if you have Miles Morales and She Hulk in a deck, that allows you to decide if you're going to have the early one or the late one, and it gives you some versatility if you don't get the draw, because of the fact that She Hulk does require kind of a specific draw to make a play work. Um, so like, if you were to have the versatility in your deck to use She Hulk in a late round as well as an early round in 4, so like 6 as well as 4, then you have the versatility to use like Miles Morales early or late and decide whether to use She Hulk early or late. And that gives you like, that gives you kind of it gives you enough variety that for turn 3 and 4 and for turn 5 and 6, you're almost guaranteed to have a solid combo and not try to be like, oh my god, I'm always drawing out, and if I don't get my draw, I'm always retreating. Like, this can insulate against a few extra retreats potentially, I feel like, with Miles Morales in there, and like a Nightcrawler and Vision to keep things moving, or even like an Iron Fist moves a card pretty early, and then you could drop Miles Morales, and that's
Yeah,
at pretty low cost too.
I just found that Miles Morales' viability kind of went away quick compared to some of the newer cards that are being added, um, like a She-Hulk or even an Infinite, which I believe came out around the same time
Yeah,
as Miles Morales. But like the viability of him is less, I find, because it it does require having that early movement draw
yeah,
in order for him to be viable.
yeah. But I feel like because She Hulk has that steady ability to do it in either turn position, that gives more value to Miles Morales now. So I'd be curious to see if there's going to be more Miles Morales cards played now that She Hulk's out there. You know, and then like I feel like that might also diminish the value of like Sarah based decks, because I think that was the next card we were going to talk about, and that one's
Yeah,
playable on turn 5, right? And her ongoing makes all cards cost one less. But if you're doing this She Hulk Miles Morales thing with the Nightcrawler Vision kind of Iron Fist kind of deal, you're almost guaranteed the movement that's going to make the one card cheap, and then you can start skipping the rest of that turn if that card's cheap or whatever, and get She Hulk in there on the low. So like I feel like that's really gonna make Sarah a little less useful than she used to be. Not that she can't be in specific decks and situations, but I feel like with this set of combos, it just kind of like makes her a little less powerful than this deck could potentially be. But um, I don't have a She Hulk to
Unless
try it
you
with.
unless you've got a deck that's built with a bunch of high cost cards, then Sarah could be beneficial, right? Because she lowers the cost of.
By one. So I mean, if you have like a 6, it's only a 5. So then you can still throw another one out there. So I guess if you were to throw her in the deck, then potentially, right, she
But
could. Go ahead.
say for example, you have the Jess Jones Infinite play, right?
Right.
So Jess Jones becomes 3 then. So you can play her turn 3,
Well, no.
wait turn 4,
Well,
play
no, no, no,
Infinite
because
turn
Sarah's a
5.
turn 5 card, so you don't get this reduction like in your hand. It's just once you her ongoing once you play her, so it's only for turn 6. That's why I'm thinking she's losing that value to these cards that can do that so much earlier. But the thing with Sarah that could make her powerful with Miles Morales, She Hulk, and all that, and Gamora, is you can you can reduce the cost of all your cards for that turn 6. Where, I mean, let's just say you had a 1 cost Miles Morales. He's now 0. Let's just say you had She-Hulk 0. She's still 0. You had her 1, now she's 0. You could have a free 10 spot to drop, and you could split play it on turn 6. And a lot of times that turn 6 is like, boy, I sure need a split play. So I could see cases where Sarah would actually be useful with She-Hulk, Miles Morales, Vision, Nightcrawler, Iron Fist kind of base deck. Throw some other stuff in there, pepper it around, get the extra movement, throw in your high cost cards, maybe throw in America Chavez to make sure you draw right turns 1 through 5,
Yeah, because that increases your odds of
Yeah.
getting the, yeah,
Yeah.
past turn 6.
I mean, with a deck like that, I'm almost tempted to not both, but one or the other, a Domino or a Quicksilver, just to give me like even better draws for certain turns. If I was going to do that, I'd probably Quicksilver, but even then, I think America's enough. But if you wanted to go like heavy on the back end, then Quicksilver to pull him into your hand always and draw one. But I feel like if you're not going to play him, that costs you a card, so it's probably better to do the America version of that. I think that's why she's always better for controlling your draws. But yeah, as far as weaknesses of She-Hulk, like the graphic says, surely you must be joking. I mean, I can't see anything that would really make you not want to play a deck like that if you could, or if you could master it. Like that sounds pretty
Yeah,
enticing to me.
she's a pretty well balanced one too. So you know you can use her in a couple different ways. I guess is what I'm saying by like well balanced. Like you don't have to use her in like one specific. If I don't get these cards, then I'm screwed
Yeah,
situation.
yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And then of course, if you're talking about She-Hulk, you can't talk about She-Hulk and not talk about Titania, right?
Right. Especially with the show lately.
Yep. Yep.
And she's a one cost 5 power card, which is insane for a 1 cost card, to be honest.
It is, but
Um,
I mean, it comes at a pretty hefty price, in my opinion.
yeah, if you play any card gets played at that location, she switches sides, which is
Very on
that's
point for her character.
very on point, yes, but also very dangerous. Like you almost can't play her until turn 6,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
somebody fills the spot up early. So like, if your opponent already filled a location, then you could play her, but
Yeah.
not until
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Or
Um,
I guess if your opponent's filled that spot, then she's a good late turn card for 1 cost. It's a good reason to stuff her in, I think.
yeah, that's basically what I was saying. I don't
Yeah.
guess I didn't.
My bad. I didn't. I didn't quite get what you were putting down there, but yeah, definitely. Like if you're playing her late, yeah, cheap, 100%. I'm with
Could,
that.
could, could you imagine her with my Kazar deck?
Yeah, yeah, that would be nasty. That would be nasty if you throw her down late. That would be nasty. How much is Kazar's cost?
For
Yeah, so turns 5 and 6. A lot of times you see full locations, like going into them. So yeah, you could definitely. I could see that. I'm picking me up a little bit in you.
Yeah, that would be a filthy play actually, because Kazar would buffer to a 6, and she'd be a late game card, which my Kazar deck doesn't
Yeah,
have a ton of.
right.
So yeah, that would be. I might actually have to pick that card up when I see it.
Yeah, and that one will be a 3,000 token card, so not too costly. I feel like she's also got some potential with like cards that have movement. Um, like to play at the location and move her, then move them away potentially. But yeah, it's kind of super risky. But I feel like that's a good. She's a good one for like a Storm Jubilee deck too, though, because lock down the location, and then after playing
And then
Titania,
evilly pull her out.
yeah, pull
Yeah.
her out, and then she moves there, and then your next turn you move her back with when you play Jess Jones. And because technically you're not playing the card there, it's not going to affect Jess Jones as far as her buff. So that would be a good play, and then you would fill that side too. The only problem is um, if they were to destroy that location, then it would undo the play, and Titania is wild again. So
Yeah,
I'd say or
but
known,
that's a very specific use case of like they would have to destroy those locations.
yeah, and so that might give Rhino a little more value potentially. But it doesn't lock the location down, so you're still kind of like I don't know. I feel like you're kind of at the mercy of
RNG at that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
RNG if somebody else was to cast something, and she's already RNG enough. So I feel like she's a good card for a full area, or like if you are the last person to play on turn 6, that'd be a great play. And then make her the last card you play at that location. Boom.
Yeah, I'm often not the last person to play, so it seems I have bad luck when it comes to that.
Yeah. I think the next card up's one you were looking forward to. You said, right? Luke Cage.
Yeah, Luke Cage and Maria Hill are the two that I was like very very intrigued in. I'm just trying to scroll down to remember her in a sec. So it's a uh, 2 cost, 1 power, ongoing. Your cards cannot have the power reduced. Um,
Yeah. I had someone use that. I legit, like, I seen him get played and everything. And I sat there going, why didn't the math the math? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah. Because he doesn't let stuff get reduced. I was like, well, farts.
yep. And that would work great with a Sunspot deck. Um, because or places that are locations that minus your power. But if you combine her with like him with like Maria Hill,
That's a 2/3 on reveal. Add one random cost card to your hand card.
yes. The reason I like that is because I run a 1 cost Khazar buff deck. So a lot of my cards cost 1. So if I randomly add a card to my hand, right, it's going to be a
Right.
low card, and the power can't be reduced. So once I make Khazar, everyone's going to stay buffed no matter what what they plan to do with my guy, unless they destroy Khazar. But Khazar's
Definitely,
not.
definitely would have a good combo with Valkyrie, I think, right? Because Valkyrie reduces all cards at a location to 3 power. So if you had Luke Cage there before you played Valkyrie, all your cards stay strong, and you can nuke somebody else, and that maintains strength against armor cards. It maintains strength against cards that otherwise couldn't be destroyed, removed, etc. Because you could protect your side with them and say, hey, guess what? My cards stay powerful, but all yours are worth 3, and even if they have it max, that's 12. A Hulk can drop down on that.
Valkyrie would be a good counter to Shang-Chi too.
Well, exactly. And see, the thing with Shang-Chi is he's a 4/3, so he doesn't, he costs more than he gives you for. And if you don't land it at the spot you need to land it at, you're screwed. Or if for some reason, say someone's using a sunspot, but he doesn't buff up to 9, he's at an 8, you can't kill him. What are you going to do? And if someone's using a lot of like mid power, guys that, just come in right under 9, what are you going to do? Like, guy could have like 2, 3, 8s on a spot. That's some big numbers. Throwing another card, random, whatever, under 9. I mean, you can't break any of them down. What are you gonna do? And so this combo lets you put Valkyrie down and go, yeah, by the way, don't care, everything's reduced. So yeah, you got to commit 2 spots to Valkyrie and Luke Cage, but then you can only drop anything because you only have to beat a 12.
Yeah, exactly.
And that I think gives you a good split push chance on turn sixes and stuff too, because a lot of times split push is like my weakness with an Infinite deck, because I'm like, well, can't split push. Guess it's sucks to be me time.
Guess it's time to retreat. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, then Luke Cage would also be good, for example, because it's not even at the location. I misspoke before. It's just like they can't have their powers reduced ongoing cards. So like you can play Valkyrie wherever you need her to. That's what's even better. You don't have to. I was misspeaking. You don't even have to play her and Luke Cage at the same spot. So you can have her by herself somewhere. Yeah, you can literally throw a location away with Luke Cage if you had to, and still come out on top. And so I feel like that gives like say insulation against Scorpion, Iceman, Spider Woman, all these kinds of like, you know, screw your deck and reduce the power kind of cards. It gives power to Lizard, right? Because if Lizard is played and then the enemy has the luxury of like being in maybe say your situation with a 1 cost card deck, well, that's pretty easy to play 4 cards there and still win. So now my Lizard's going to only be worth 2. Well, if I have Luke Cage, he's still worth 5. So that's some good synergy there. And Lizard's a low cost, high power card. I feel like that could be a thing.
And like I said before, it instantly wipes out the effect of the locations that give you -2 power.
Yeah, like
and things like
Necrosha.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Wolfsbane, for example, that's a card I think. I don't know if you use in your 1 cost deck. Do you use Wolfsbane?
I do use Wolfbane a lot
Yeah,
in my 1 cost.
he would work good with Luke Cage, right? Because if for some reason a Killmonger killed any of your cards that it buffed him, he maintains the power he already had from the buff, right?
Yes,
So,
he would.
I'd see Luke Cage having value for a card like Wolfsbane too. I used to rock a lot of Jurassic Moon deck with Devil Dino and Moon Girl, and one of the things that always gets you with Devil Dino is he looks stronger than he is for 1 turn because you're gonna get a card, then you got to play a card, and you don't draw again. So like he always looks stronger than he is if you play, because you don't draw again. So one of the things is that could reduce that.
Yes, it could. Yep.
And then what was the next one?
Let me scroll down here. The next one was Absorbing Man.
No. I mean that works with Luke Cage.
Oh. Uh,
I think it was
Devil
Namor.
Dino. Namor was the next one we enlisted.
Yeah.
Because Namor, if he's the only card you play at a location, he's +5, right? So if you play Luke Cage, then he's always that +5.
Right.
So he's always a 2 power card.
Which is kind of like Warpath, who gets +4 if he's the only if you have an empty location, but you have to have an empty location. But if you fill it later, you're screwed. But if you have Luke Cage, he maintains that, so that's a good way too. But yeah, I think you said the next one was Absorbing Man, so let's take a look at him.
Yes. Next one is Absorbing Man. So Absorbing Man is a 4-cost, 3-power card, with its effect being that on reveal effects, if you played a card last turn that had an unreal effect, that had a reveal effect, sorry, he would copy it. So, in my opinion, 2 strategies that he would work well with would be using Storm,
Right.
To wipe out multiple locations,
Right.
by freezing them and flooding them, or Jubilee, so you could pull potentially 2 very high-powered cards out of your deck.
Yeah,
for the cost of Jubilee, which is only a 4 cost card.
yeah, that would be pretty good.
Those are the two strategies that I felt that Absorbing Man would work well with. He could also work well with like a card stealing deck, like a Agent Carter cable kind of deck
Yeah, yeah,
as well. Though I don't see a lot of those in play nowadays, but he could work well for those as well.
yeah. If you're playing to destroy locations, you can play with Rhino as well. Destroy two, but
Yep.
it's kind of low value. But it's a combo that you know, if you're finding like say a particular weekly event location is screwing you, that might be a combo comes in handy if you are an
Like
absorbing man player.
Vibranium.
Yeah, yeah, and then Ironheart. So you could get an effect that's kind of like Lockjaw. So if you're playing a Lockjaw Ironheart deck, which I've seen a couple times, that's a good mid turns combo to get the doggy and Ironheart out there, and then um, Ironheart goes back in your hand, and Lockjaw, much like Jubilee, pulls another card out for you. But it's allowing you to play two Ironheart plays or three Ironheart plays to buff cards if you want. Like, and you can do a similar thing with Absorbing Man, in that you know not that you play him with Lockjaw, but that you could play Ironheart with him and get two Ironhearts effectively if say you didn't draw your Lockjaw by the
Yeah,
turn four,
yeah,
because
that would
Ironheart
be
would
it.
be a turn three, right?
Sorry, I'm trying to think through the strategy. Yeah, that would work. That would work quite well
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So that would be pretty cool. And then I think like strong reveal ability cards that cost five, along with like another two cost card or one cost card on turn six. Sorry, I don't know why I said two cost. Um, so if you or yeah, along with another two cost card on turn six. So like he would combine with the other two cost card, and then the reveal card would be something like Gamora, um, to make Creel get that plus 12, or something like Black Panther, right? And then that makes Absorbing Man a 6, which, like, if you have, like, other things like Iron Man or something in your deck that can make that even more powerful, that could be good, or it could just be enough to edge out an area late game if you need a split push. Um, Black Bolt, you can remove multiple cards, which would, like, I believe, what, debuff a Devil Dinosaur, for example. So you could debuff a Devil Dino that way, by like getting rid of multiple cards. White Tiger,
Or a white tiger as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, White Tiger. So like you get two. That's kind of like, man. Can you imagine if you like did like a Wong Absorbing Man White Tiger? I'm gonna just call that the zoo. Like holy shit, man. Can you imagine? Like that would be nasty. I expect to see it in the future. And the first person that destroys my Infinite deck with it, honestly, respect. But I expect to see that.
I might actually try to build that deck.
Oh, that would be so nasty. That would be so
That,
nasty. Wong
that's
Absorbing Man, White
disgusting.
Tiger.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
And then
I don't
the,
even want to think about that. That's oh
well, yeah. So you get 10 with the White Tiger Absorbing Man, and then you get like all these other White Tigers. I mean, ugh, ugh. It'd be gross. But yeah, I think the next one up is the other card you were looking for, Maria Hill, right?
yeah, because she adds a random card to my hand, which will work well with my 1 cost
Yeah,
deck
it's a
for
random one
sure.
cost card she adds, right? And at a two
Uh,
power, go ahead.
no, it's add a random 4 or 5 card to your hand, not
No,
one
that's
cost.
Agent Coulson.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is a 1 cost. Yeah. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. No worries, no
I
worries.
skipped ahead.
But
Um,
yeah, so she's a 2/3 with the on reveal adds the one the random one cost, which is good because you run that one cost because our one cost crew deck.
Yeah, I've like over half my deck is one cost cards with
Yeah,
the Kazard deck, so it's like I get would get a lot of pulls from
yeah, it's free
that.
draws. That's nice.
Yeah,
I could.
and because they're so low, I can play multiple in a turn,
Yep.
so I end up with an advantage
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of like just raw power. They might
Yeah.
be low power, but the raw power.
Less
So I can
energy unspent on turn 4 and 3 for sure.
yes,
Yeah, I think there's only like Cloak, Colleen Wing, and Lizard that actually have higher power than Maria Hill. So just for a 2 cost card, she's actually pretty dope. Just straight up without the ability, she's actually pretty dope just on power level alone. Then you add that in that little on reveal benefit for a 1 cost deck. That's not a bad little play on turn 2 because what else are you gonna play on turn 2? Daredevil, maybe that would have value like that she can't provide, but even then it's just a different kind of value. It's not really a comparable like kind of thing. But I think probably if she does have a weakness, it is that she has to work more in a 1 cost card deck because she's not gonna really help you if you have powerful cards.
yeah. Her true use case is definitely a low cost like team up deck where we're gonna outplay you with sheer numbers essentially.
Yeah, and so then like you were fast forwarding to earlier, Agent Coulson. I mean, you can't talk about Maria Hill without Agent Coulson. Um, and he's a 3/4 card with an on reveal that adds a random 4 and 5 cost card to your hand, which is it's cool, but they're also random cards, so who knows if it's going to be useful or if it's going to be a dud. And depending on the kind of deck you run, if you've already filled up your hand with a fair number of cards, that might not work for you. That might screw you on your draws. So, you know, it's a risky card. It's I think it's got the benefit. So I'd say like where Jubilee pulls in a specific card from your deck, but it's a random one, and unless you have a lot of low cost cards in your hand, you're not going to draw that one big card you need out of your deck or have high odds for it. I think with this, you're always getting a high cost card. It's just not for free because you can't, it doesn't come for free like Jubilee. But you're always getting a high cost card, so you should always get something somewhat powerful. But I think that's a risky play. I think that's a very risky play. I'm not really sure how much we're gonna see
One
Agent
thing
Coulson.
one thing it does do though is it does increase your odds of drawing a card late game that you may have a lower earned chance of getting.
Well,
So like
why is that? Because it's adding random ones. It's not like from your deck or your hand like other cards. Like it's just like putting random cards in your hand.
oh yeah, my bad. I guess I
Oh,
misunderstood
no
that. I
worries.
thought it was pulling from your desk.
If it was, then that would be great. That'd be like I'd consider having him instead of America. That way, like I get good turn sixes, not just a consistent turn 6 draw that gives me my 1 through 5 draws better. Like I could see that,
Ooh.
but since it's not that kind of a play, I don't know that we're gonna see a ton of Agent Coulson. Um, and like one of the strong decks, the Infinite deck, it wouldn't work well with either because it's going to draw 1 or 2 cards for a turn that's really just not even going to get played. And then, like, the only time it would really get played, or you would want to have had played it, is if you're going to have to play, like, Vision for movement and Hulk or America on turn 6 with that Infinite deck. But otherwise, I just don't really see the value in the Agent Coulson card. I'm sure someone will find it out there. They'll find that value, maybe with a discard deck or something like that, extra stuff to throw away. I don't know, but like I personally am not sure the value that we're gonna
Yeah,
get
it
out of
doesn't
that.
really fit my style of play, so it's not one that I've really looked at.
Same. Um,
Yeah.
and then next up, I think we have another mainstay of Shield. What do we got here?
We have Let me scroll. I'm scrolling. The Helicarrier, which is a 6 cost 10 power card. When you discard from your hand, replace it with 3 random cards.
So much like Coulson, you get random power from it, inconsistency there. But instead of being a weaker card that does this and preps you for later stages, it's a raw power card that doesn't compete with Hulk, doesn't really compete with, most heavy hitters in the 6 cost range. But if you also, were never intending to play it and you already have strong heavy hitters for turn 6, you could just fully play this in a discard deck as a means to just like, what kind of RNG am I gonna get? Because I got room in my hand. What's up? You know what I mean? Like, and what if you draw something that's like, whoo, I don't even own that card, and we're gonna fucking wreck with it. But when I've seen it played against me so far in this new patch, they've just used it for raw power in turn 6, and I've beaten it. So
Yeah, it's it's not a card. Again, it's one of them ones that it's like I don't like that it's random. I like to build decks with specific strategies in play.
yeah, me too.
So when they're telling me that I'm gonna get a random card that I know nothing about,
Yep.
I'm instantly like, I don't want to use this
Right.
thing.
It's like
You
you
know?
could get leader, or you could get
Or you could
Electra
get the Watcher.
and Quicksilver in the Watcher. You know, like, because the thing with Coulson is at least they're 4 and 5 costs. You know, but with Helicarrier, I mean, shit, you could get 3 1s, 3 2s. I mean, you could wind up with some low power. Um, but it would work well with a discard deck. You'd get Lady Sif out there killing it, maybe, or something like that, and then see what's up. Like if you have APOC and this in your deck, you can kill the Helicarrier and just see what cards you have to play in front of APOC, or if you get something stronger than APOC, plus you get the buff on APOC at the same time, if you can discard him too, like in the
But
same.
again, you're leaving a lot of that up to RNG, and
Yeah,
I'm just not a fan of that.
yeah, you're already having to draw a good hand RNG, and then this adds a whole nother level onto that. And I feel like if you're adding coin flips on top of coin flips, that's just exponentially bad very fast. So I don't really see the value in the Helicarrier, unless you're specifically running a discard deck that doesn't run APOC, maybe. That way they're not competing for discard.
Next up is Mbaku,
Ah, the
which is
second
a
most
one
powerful
cost two
man in
power card.
Wakanda.
Um, if this is in your deck after the final turn, it jumps into a random location, which is actually kind of cool.
It's cool, but it's also kind of like Captain Marvel that you don't have to play to have it jump somewhere to make a difference. And it's only worth 2, and so it would be helpful, I guess, if your location isn't full, and if 2 is going to make that big difference. Or if you've got
Yeah,
Kazar, because he's going to jump in as a 1 cost, and that's an
yeah,
ongoing buff, he'll get stronger. But
yeah.
still,
It's a late push
yeah,
card where you're like, I
right,
might win, I might not, but
right,
also like I said, it would work pretty well with Kazar because he's gonna buff it to a 3 power as opposed to a two
right.
power.
And like Okoye, because this card's strongest when it's still in your deck, Okoye buffs cards in your deck by 1, so that would make him a 3 just coming out, swinging. And then you add Kazar to that, you could actually get a pretty mid-sized strength card there for no cost and at the right time when you need it. So I
Yeah,
mean, I can see the value in it. I could definitely see the value in it. It's gonna need those specific types of things like Kazar in play. It's gonna be most beneficial if you've already had a Koye back there. Um, yeah, yeah, and I think it's like it's similar to Angel in that it's a passive trigger. You don't have to do anything for it to get called out. So like where like say like you play like Carnage or something, and eat a bunch of cards, Angel comes out and goes, "Huzzah! It is I, Angel, because you killed a card here." You know, and so that free cost thing going on with that. But whereas you have to destroy something to get Angel to come back, M'Baku's just like, "Surprise, bitch! It's turn 6 and you just lost."
Yeah, yeah. The one kind of disadvantage to that with my one cost card in particular would be the fact that if I have all my locations full, which I can have happen in my one cost deck,
Right,
he would have nowhere to play.
right. Yeah, that is true. I think another synergy he has is with a Storm Jessica Jones mid turn play, because if you're locking down that location and you can't put anything else there aside from like movement cards, what if you didn't get the movement cards, or what if the movement cards weren't enough, or what if you need those movement cards at a different location to shore that one up, and you're gonna lose that location you locked down because they managed to buff the cards that they already had there, or move something in, or what have you.
Yeah,
In that case, M'Baku's going to show up there and be like, "Surprise, you win now," because cards can't be played there. But I don't think that means he can't show up there.
I think he'd be okay to be
Yeah,
there.
because that's similar to movement like Nightcrawler and Vision. We'd have to see to know, but just going off the data of it, I think that's how it would work, and so that would be a pretty good play if it does work that way. Um, but you know, it does also have that whole thing where it can sway the outcome in turn 6, like Captain Marvel. But where Captain Marvel, you can see it coming and retreat, M'Baku gives you the advantage of you have no clue as the opponent, and next thing you know, you just got blindsided by it, and oh, I lost. There's my points. There's
Yeah,
my cubes.
because you
Bye.
may not you may not know what kind of deck he's running.
Yeah,
Like some decks you can tell fairly easily,
yeah,
but other
yeah.
decks you're like, I don't really know what his plan is here.
And this card can be sneaky in a lot of different decks too, without looking like a specific deck. So, or without a deck looking like, ooh, he's gonna have M'Baku in it. So I think that could be, one of his advantages is that surprise element. I think next up we have Atuma, who is an Atlantean. I think our next two cards up actually are Atlanteans. And Atuma, he's actually an exile of the lost city of Atlantis, and basically his quest is kind of Killmongery in that he wants to come back to where he comes from and conquer it or become its ruler. So interesting history for him. And he's a 4/10 card, so he's got the power of the Helicarrier, right? But at much less cost, earlier turn, and but if you have any other card there at the end of that turn, he gets destroyed. So unlike like things like who were we talking about earlier that has the reduction when you play another card there? Namor, I
It was
think.
Namor, but also, oh, yeah, it was Namor that we were talking about
Okay,
earlier.
yeah.
Yeah,
So cards like Namor that buff by playing alone, um, you know, they if you play another card there just reduce their power. Whereas Atuma starts off buffed out with that 10, but like Namor, but the difference being he doesn't play well with others, and if anybody shows up, he's gone. He's gone, and like that makes him susceptible to some things. If someone's got a green goblin, or if someone's got a hobgoblin, because hobgoblin's going to be the very next turn if they have them, because it's a 5-cost card, and then green goblin's only a 3-cost card to put just a card there to screw them, and you get the benefit of it being a -3. So if you were to play any of those, because it doesn't say played card or anything like that, that's the very specific text, is that it's if you have another card here, it just has to be there. So if someone plays one of those cards, Atuma just goes, peace, deuces, I'm gone. And I don't think that's something even Luke Cage can save him from.
No, because Luke Cage specifically says cannot reduce power, doesn't say it can't be destroyed.
Right. Now, you could play him with armor, though, and that would make it so that you could play other cards there, I would think, because it doesn't allow cards to be
Yes,
destroyed.
you
So
could, because
that would
it
make that a
can't be
good combo.
destroyed.
And for a 2 and a 4 turn, 6 energy, you're going to get 13, and that's pretty powerful. You know, like that's a 6 cost play for 6 costs split on 2 turns. So that's really, really, really nice right there. That's like a really nice one. But it requires you to get the right draw and all that stuff, which is no different than any other hand. So if you can make it work, it's a pretty powerful card. Pretty powerful card.
It's not a great strategy to like hang your hat on, but
Right.
in a pinch it could work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you know when to retreat and when not to, you could definitely make that work. If you struggle on identifying the win condition and when you're gonna lose or when you don't have good, pot odds as it were, then it might not be the card for you. Yeah. So then I think next up we got oh well, to circle back real quick to Atuma, Jess Jones and Storm make a good mid play, but they max out at 10. This guy starts at 10, and if you put armor there, 13. So I think that's probably one of the reasons there's that allure. Because with Storm and Jess Jones, you still have to draw the 2 cards to make it work. So if you draw the 2 cards to make this work, I don't see any real big difference in it risk wise. It's just a different type of strategy for a different number of points. And honestly, after I get Shuri, I might consider getting a Tuma to try that little combo out because it might work well with an Infinite deck that way.
It is a catchy strategy that could work for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So then next up is the other Atlantean we have here, and the last card in the series 4 cards that we're going to look at. Well, it's not just because we're going to look at it; it's the last one, and then we're going to go into the 6/5 series cards that are considered super rare by the devs. But first up, we have the last Atlantean, or last card, and the other Atlantean we have in here, Orca.
So this card is very similar to Namor in that it's an ongoing effect of +5 power if it's the only card there, but it's a 6 cost 9 power card to begin with. So instead of it being 10 power with the effect, it would be what, 14?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like a bigger Namor, or like so I think that's kind of the theme with the Atlanteans. They either start out real strong and if someone shows up, they poof, or they start out real strong and if someone shows up, they get weaker. And that's kind of like the theme of the Atlanteans, which it makes sense thematically because I think what they're going for here with the devs is the whole they fight underwater thing. So if they're fighting with other people, they're not underwater kind of thing. I think that's kind of what they're going for. And I can dig it. I think the other thing is so the other 6 cost card power wise straight up without like the ongoing that compares is America, who always draws on turn 6. But Orca can have more power. So unless you're using America specifically to ensure draws on turn 1 through 5, Orca could have some value there. And then I feel like it's important to note that as a bad guy, Orca is more like a king shark. From DC. He's naive, gullible. He was a soldier of Atlantis, but he was used by Krang. Got a bad rap. And so what he does now is he's a hero for hire. So he actually works with Luke Cage, which kind of makes sense considering if you got a Luke Cage on the board, Orca can't reduce, right? The ongoing, so 14 power. So I kind of like that little detail. I love the way Marvel Snap does that with the lore in terms of how the abilities are going to work. I love the way they kind of combo that.
They synergize that way.
Yeah, it's really cool. So that's going to round out the Series 4 cards, and we got 6 Series 5 cards considered super rare. They're going to cost 6,000 tokens. These are the ones I would save your collector's tokens for if any of them are the ones you want the most, because that's going to be expensive, and you may have 6,000 already. So the first one, who do we have for the first one?
Silver Surfer, which is a 4 cost, 0 power card, but
Right,
on reveal, it doubles the power of all 6 cost cards, wherever they are.
right, and that's an
The
interesting
keyword,
power.
the keyword you gotta look out for there is all. So it would also increase the 6 cost cards of
Yep,
your opponent.
yep, that is, and the other key element is wherever they are. So whether they're played, whether they're in hand, whether they're in deck, wherever they are, this
So if they have an
happens.
infinite, you're screwed.
Right, exactly. I think that's definitely an issue. But it makes sense again with the way they synergize their lore into the game elements here, because Norin Rad, Silver Surfer, he became the Herald of Galactus, who's like the Devourer of Worlds, right? And the next card we'll talk about. He became his herald because he basically went up to Galactus when Galactus was going to devour his planet and said, "Look, I'll let you take me. I'll find you some other planet. Please leave my planet alone. Please, please. I'll bargain with you." And Galactus said, "All right, fine. Makes less work for me, and I like eating planets, so either way I win. Fuck it. Do your thing." So he's basically, the Silver Surfer, he spends his time trying to find planets that don't have like sentient life on them, but have enough like to them that Galactus can devour him, and sustain himself. And so, considering that he's like this, kind of like just person, right? Like morally, like, just person. It kind of makes sense that he buffs all cards, not just his side, and I think that's interesting.
I also find that very, very interesting. Yeah.
But yeah. So next up we
Um,
have Galactus, right? And that's the guy Nornrad works for. Galen is his name, and he existed before the 616, and he'll exist after it probably. He will outlive us all.
Most likely, yep.
So you want to give us a rundown of that one?
Yep. Give me a quick second here. So it's a 6 cost, 3 power card. On reveal effect, if this is your only card here, destroy all other cards. Or sorry, destroy all other locations. Not cards, locations. So this would basically work well if you're building a deck where you just want to overpower one location, you want to eliminate all the bad status effects, basically, for
Right.
for um yeah. So we've got there's only 3 power, which is weak. Um, but again, because it destroys the locations, it gives you an upper hand that way.
Yeah,
Uh,
but it works best on a location they have low power or will stay empty.
yes,
Yeah, you can get a similar effect for one location and one less cost by playing Professor X because he's a 3 power card. He just doesn't destroy 2 locations, he just locks one down. But if you know you're going to win that one by playing him there, especially say you had a Daredevil played earlier, then you can lock that one down. And I'm really concerned to see what happens if you lock a location down with Professor X and Galactus tries to destroy it. Because that could get very interesting. Because he does destroy the location, but Professor X says you can't move cards from it. So I'm assuming he just destroys them all and it all goes. But it'd be interesting to see if it doesn't work that way.
yeah, I would assume that you can't like those points that are there don't count towards a victory
Yeah.
or a loss.
Yeah, I would assume even with Professor X, he destroys it.
Yeah.
But there is a guy, a couple of guys actually, who might survive this bullshit. Wolverine and Deadpool. Those those guys can come back. Now Deadpool, you won't be able to play him unless you were able to get like a low energy situation that allowed you to play Galactus a turn early, because Deadpool has to be replayed, but it'll be at like double power. Um, but Wolverine, he'll survive and he'll get replayed. And since there's only
And
one
then
remaining
random.
location, what you really only have to do is beat a 5. If you could beat a 5, you're good. And if you had the chance to buff these cards beforehand, you're even better, which makes a Koye a good pick to try to buff Galen or Galactus early on while he's still in your deck. That way, he's a 4 when he pops out.
Which makes him a little more viable for like
Yeah,
situations where you need that
yeah.
touch of extra power.
And if you're lucky, you get a Koye, Wolverine, and Galactus in your starting hand, and you just laugh because you have 6. It'd be better though if you didn't have Galactus yet or Wolverine yet, and you just had a Koye in your starting hand, and then you drew out the whole way. But that's risky because you got to draw out, and I don't recommend that. Then the next card up, we talked about a little bit. My bad. I forgot to mention these to circle back. So we actually had a community contribution to the segment on Galactus. Oro, in chat, they pointed out to me this week that Electro and Psylocke will have value with Galactus because they will give you extra energy for your final turn or for other turns and things like that. So there could be extra value there with an Electro kind of Psylocke situation. The only issue with Electro is you can only play the one card per turn, but it does give you max energy. So there could be something there with like a Sunspot maybe on the same place as Galactus, having that extra energy, So there's some stuff there, but also the fact that you might be able to play him early. If you get Electro, you could play Galactus on turn 5 instead of 6, and that's what we were talking about before. If you could play him early, you can get bigger value out of him because they'll only be able to make one play on turn 6, and as long as you can beat that one play on turn 6, you're fine. And so if you've got like, him and Wolverine and, Electro or Psylocke or something there, and then you drop like, a Hulk at the end, it's going to be really hard for them to beat you on turn 6 without an Infinite. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'd say that's probably Galactus's weakness is there's another dude out there who's a big guy. And since the Infinite's considered a macro dimensional being from a universe larger, right, on exponential scale than ours, Galactus is big in this universe, but that dude is just a normal guy in a much larger universe than ours. So he would, definitely be able to stand toe to toe with Galen, I think. And yeah, and in that case, on a turn 6, if you destroy the locations and you can just drop, an Infinite, you're kind of screwed. But if the guy, because it is an on reveal, right? So if on turn 6 you drop it, you could screw where he played the Infinite. So it's
Or
kind
you
of
have a
a
card that has an effect that says unreveal effects don't happen.
yeah. If they play Cosmos somewhere and you can't get Galactus down, that could be a rough situation if you can't get him down somewhere else. Yeah, 100%. And then, so the next card up is one we did talk about a little bit earlier, Valkyrie. You want to give us a rundown of Valkyrie?
Yes, yes. Uh, Scrolling. Valkyrie is a 5-cost, 3-power card with an unreveal effect that sets all cards at this location to 3 power.
Yep.
Um, so again, this card could be a good use against Shang-Chi, because he only destroyed 9 tower cards.
Yep.
Uh, could also counter a Scorpion as well.
Yep. Could also help against a blue Marvel who buffs everybody +1 when he shows up.
Yeah.
And then she just makes a good backup plan. If you can find a way to work her into a deck that otherwise doesn't, have her in it and has like a bunch of other combos you're gonna rock, then you could pull her for like a generic card, you have like an America Chavez or a Hulk, and then ensure you get the win on turn 6 by dropping her down and saying, guess what, you don't have power here anymore. Sucks to suck. And
Yeah.
so I feel like she's a good backup card. Like when you don't get the draws you want, if you draw her instead, you're kind of like, well, I'll probably win maybe. But you're gonna have to really get used to like identifying that win condition and what the math is on that. Otherwise, you could walk yourself into some more cube heavy losses than if you retreated earlier when you didn't have the option because of Valkyrie. That brings us to our next one, which is the Super Scroll. So that's like Talos, only like on crack. He's a 6 cost, 6 power card, which, you know, on the surface is like, that's not. But his ongoing is that he has the ability to have all the ongoing effects of all the enemy cards. So if somebody plays Iron Man on turn 5 and you have Super Scroll sitting in your hand, you can kind of go, that's cool, I can do that too. And if they have other ongoing effects on top of that, then it just gets really nasty. It gets really nasty. But that's a reactive thing, and I kind of feel reacting in this game kind of like shoots you in the foot a lot.
Yeah, if you're reacting to somebody playing, you're behind the 8 ball, and you're most likely gonna lose.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to be proactive.
Yeah. So I think, you know, Super Scroll, probably not the most value card there is, but it's interesting. Which brings us to the card I'm excited about and that I want when it comes up in the store, if I can get it, and that's Shuri. Want to give us a rundown of Shuri?
Yep, I'm working on it. Sherry is a 4 cost, 2 power card with an unreveal effect that doubles the power of the next card you play. Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
Talk about
or Vision or an Iron Man. Ooh.
talk about
Well,
like
maybe not Iron Man because Iron Man has 0 power, but it'd be you get the effect of Iron Man
yeah, but on like
without
one
having to
card.
waste spot necessarily.
Yeah, and because she only costs 4, you can have like a scalpel focus, whereas Iron Man is just like kind of like launching shit everywhere, like one of those missiles he launches at the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, right? Just splits up and
Yeah.
woo everywhere. He's kind of everywhere with it, but for 1 cost less, you can drop Shuri, and like with precision of a scalpel, you can get 1 card that you need buffed, dropped at a location, and you could play her turn 4, skip turn 5, and have a 40 burger infinite, and I think that's just disgusting. And I think you gotta start looking out if people play Shuri turn 4 and do nothing on turn 5, they're gonna fuck you up with an infinite.
Yeah, they are.
And then I think if you're playing a deck like that requires like say vision for movement, or if you're just playing a deck that has vision and movement, aside from the infinite one, if you play Shuri then vision, you get a 14 power card with movement. I mean, talk about being able to like turn the tide on turn 6 at any point. So she works really well with a lot of cards, and I think Vision is like definitely one of them. But I think that goes back to that synergy with the MCU, because who was the one trying to get the Mind Stone out and separate Viz and keep him alive and all that, right? Shuri. So I think that's kind of cool that
Well,
the
I mean,
card
Shuri, Iron Man, and Bruce
I
Banner,
mean,
but
it was a lot of people, but she was kind of the leader of that whole operation with the Wakandan tech and all, like, because she could do things that made Bruce Banner and Iron Man even look kind of small potatoes. I think too, though, if Wong was played before Shuri, and then you play Shuri, because it is a reveal, that means that the next card you play should, like if you played Infinite, be an 80. So you could really do some interesting damage with Wong and Shuri. Like, I'm talking about like a big card here, but you could make a medium card into a Titan, like. And then obviously when you talk about that kind of like doubling up a power, I mean, you could quadruple Black Panther, so it's kind of like a sibling team up, right? Because with Black Panther, you have a strong amount of power to begin with, and then he'll quadruple at that point, so that'd be pretty huge. All right, so the next card we have, I believe, is Bast. He actually came up in my store, and I was kind of like, "You're interesting, but not for me." He's from Wakanda, and he was actually worshipped um, into godhood in Egypt in 10,000 BC, and possesses every Black Panther of ever's power. So I find it interesting that it's a one card.
Yeah, that's another one that would work fairly well with my one cost deck, I would say.
Yeah, because it's going to set on reveal all the cards in your hand power to 3. So, you could wait because it's a one cost till later in the game, like turn 3 or something, when you got a bunch of cards you're going to want to play because they're low cost. And then, drop this guy, buff those. I mean, that's pretty dope. I think that works well with like an Okoye too, because you can buff your deck, buff your hand. I mean, that's pretty nice.
He's a great turn one card for sure on that one cost deck.
Yeah, definitely.
If you draw, that is.
The only downside is if you have some strong cards in your deck, you can't really use this guy because, well, he's going to be like a Valkyrie.
It's going to drop the power.
But to you, yeah. So it's an interesting card. I could see some use for it, but, it's going to be in that one cost crew kind of situation. Which brings us to our final card they added, and he's a complicated one because he comes with 6 cards of his own.
Yeah.
Thanos, the big guy, the guy the game's named after.
I'm going to say you should explain all of the Thanos cards. Yeah, Thanos is a complicated.
I can do that.
Complicated enough.
I could do that. So, the death-obsessed Mad Titan, who once snapped half the universe out of existence. In the comics, it was to chase death and impress death, which is a card in-game. And at the start of the game, you shuffle the 6 Infinity Stones into your deck. So Thanos is unique in that he doesn't have an on-reveal, he doesn't have an ongoing, and his ability plays whether you throw him down or not. Like, it happens independent of anything that card does with you playing him, not playing him, having him in your hand, having him in your deck. Doesn't matter. Second the game starts, all 6 Infinity Stones are shuffled into your normal deck. So instead of having a 12-card deck, you now have an 18-card deck. But it's filled with Infinity Gems. And so those Infinity Gems, we'll go through them. The first one is the Mind Stone. And that they're all 1/1 cards. So the Mind Stone, what it does is draws 2 stones from your deck. So when you put the Mind Stone down, or if you see someone put the Mind Stone down, you might as well just retreat because they're running Thanos and they've got most of the gems and they're probably going to draw more of them. Just that's probably going to end it right there for you. The next one is the Reality Stone. Now this one transforms a location into a new one, which is like Scarlet Witch, but a 1/1. And that makes sense because where did Scarlet Witch come from in the MCU but the Reality Stone itself, basically. So, because she possesses the power of the Reality Stone, this kind of makes sense that the Reality Stone has the same ability that we've seen out of her already in the game. I actually got beat by this because it was played on turn 4, and it turned the location into the TVA, which ends the game on turn 4. So the game just ended and I lost. And I was like, ha! Cool story. And I thought I was going to win. I thought I had buffed that thing to 8 cubes and all that, and then poof, that thing turned it into the TVA. I got killed by RNG. It was nasty. But that's the thing, and that's what it is it's just RNG. Now, every single one of these makes you draw a card as well. So you know, when you think, oh, it's going to be hard to draw all 6 Infinity Stones, they're never going to beat me with that. No, because they're always drawing a card every time they play a stone. So for every time they play a stone, they get a card. So odds are good they're going to draw cards they need, or they're going to draw the stones. One way or the other, they're beating you. They could have a whole ass deck, and instead of having America Chavez at the end or something for a good draw, put Thanos in, throw the gems in, and now it's, hey, I can go with whichever one I want, and I'm drawing lots of cards. So it has that advantage. Then after the Reality Gem, we have the Time Stone. When you play this one on reveal, you draw a card, right? But next turn, you also get +1 energy. So that's kind of nice. And so, you know, like these things have such varied effects, but they're all so beneficial that you're just going to start getting ripped apart by Thanos when you see him. But it's not a guarantee, and there's a lot of, you know, dependence on drawing. There's a lot of dependence on RNG, but the benefits of the stones themselves can be enough to kind of level you. So it just depends. The next one after the Time Stone is the Space Stone. This one on reveal, next turn you can move one card at this location and then draw a card. So that makes sense because the Tesseract, right? The Space Stone, Loki got himself a whole new TV series out of that, right? Like, poofed off with that thing, and then the TVA showed up. So the Space Stone, yeah. So the Space Stone's pretty cool. It can move a card at that location. So you could turn any card into vision when that's played, and then you know, like not necessarily have to have a movement deck when you have Thanos. So that provides you the movement.
Yeah. In terms of like, we were talking earlier how like I started with like games like Yu-Gi-Oh. So Thanos for me draws comparison to a Yu-Gi-Oh card called Zodio, which you had to play its individual body parts like by it like individually. So like there was a left arm, a right arm, left leg, right leg, body, and a head.
Right.
So it took up all your spots on the field.
It's like a Gundam
But if
card.
you played it, but if you played it, it was an instant win. Like
Okay.
you won.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Yeah.
But like to me, that's kind of what Thanos will be. Is like he kind of instantly buffs you to the point where if you get all of the stones out, which is a big if,
Yeah.
you're gonna win.
And I mean, he's only an 18 card, so he's still weaker than Infinite, right? At his strongest when he has all gems played. And then, of course, playing all gems, that's 6 spots out of, 12. And that's half, so basically half your field is filled with stones. So you have to definitely have a plan in place
Seven
for
if
your,
you include him.
yeah, and right, and 7 once you play him. So 7 spots are going to be devoted out of 12. So more than half the field is going to be required for Soul Stones and Thanos. But he's going to be 18, and the stones themselves have pretty good powers. Like the Soul Stone here, you draw a card like all the others, but then enemy cards here have -1 power. So it's like, yeah, you're going to fill half your field, but you can reduce the enemy power. You can move a card when you need it to. You know, like you can do so many things that that are versatile, along with buffing, along with a powerful turn 6 card. That it's just kind of, it can be very nasty if you can make it work. The last one is the Power Stone, and that one is if you've played all the stones, Thanos has +10 power. So the Power Stone is like the key of all of them. Played on its own, it does nothing other than give you a 1/3. So that is the difference. It is the only stone that itself is a decent card, but that's because it does nothing else. Like every other one has a very powerful reveal or ongoing effect. This one does nothing unless you play Thanos and all the other Infinity Stones. So by itself, it's a 1/3 card. So, you know, that itself makes it less of a negative that half your field is filled with Thanos and Infinity Stones, because really only 5 of them totally suck in terms of like just straight power.
Yeah.
But that concludes all the new cards, and that takes us to the end of our weekly Bugle segment. So, big news segment this week. Not going to be like that every time because we're not going to have big card pool drops every week. But the weeks we do, those will be the longer ones.
Yeah, that was a really long segment, but yeah.
Yeah. So then the next segment we have here is called Smokey Strategy for Success. So here we go. All right, so on this segment, Smokey Strategy for Success, this is going to be a weekly segment where we talk about general strategies for winning the game, tips and tricks, stuff like that. That's less deck specific or mind game specific. So to start it off, the first one is you got to know your deck. You can do a lot with a little as long as you know your deck. You don't necessarily have to know every card out there, what every card does, what every deck out there is built like. As long as you know your deck, you can still succeed in this game. That said, know the odds to draw the card you need from your deck at any given point, because you don't want to have to rely on drawing two necessary cards. The exception to that is, unless you drew one of them the first draw after deal, then okay, you can try to chase that second card. Or if it's only one cube at risk and no one snapped, continue to draw cards and see what happens until somebody bets and then back out if you didn't get what you need. That said, know when to fold the hand. If you don't get what you need, someone snaps, back the hell out. Don't force it. And on top of that, you got to learn to identify the win as soon as possible in a match. So the sooner you identify the win, the sooner you know if you have to retreat, save yourself maybe 2 cubes versus 1, or 1 cube versus 2. Also know when you should snap, or when, because if you snap later, more stuff has happened and the other player might not be willing to try to draw. If you can catch someone willing to commit cubes and you're going to win early, boom. That's just, that's the way to go. And then that said, if you're going to snap when you know you'll win, it's if your hand drew perfectly, played perfectly, or if it didn't necessarily draw perfectly, but it played perfectly for what you had, then that's fine. But remember, never chase cards. Never chase cards. Aside from how we talked about the in Rule C, drawing onto when to draw one and etc. Aside from that, don't chase cards, because if you're chasing cards into a snap, you've already lost. Because unless you get what you need, don't bother. It's like playing the lottery. You don't want to play the lottery. You want to go in there knowing you're going to win and snap. Which brings us to never lose more than 1 energy if you can help it, because it's easy to weather a bunch of -1 losses than it is to weather a couple -4s or a -8. That said, also don't be afraid to retreat early, because sometimes no matter what you do, no matter what you draw, no matter what cards you have, you're going to lose that hand. Don't be afraid to retreat, because if that's the best outcome you can afford, if that's the best outcome you can make happen, then that's a win. You might not get a +1, but it's still a win, because you did the best you could in that, identified it, and played the hand the best you could and got out. And if you look at it that way, it's a lot easier to weather these -1s and these retreats, because you're not sitting there going, oh man, I'm losing all the time, I'm bad. You're going, hey, I'm good at figuring this game out, and when it comes to my hand, when I need to play it, I'm going to clean up. And I didn't lose much on the way. So once you get to that point, then you start climbing a bit better. And that said, have your turn 6 card drawn to start, or don't be afraid to retreat early if you're not getting that, unless you have a backup plan and you drew that instead. If you have your backup plan drawn and a backup plan in your deck, GG. Kind of like a Valkyrie like we talked about before and stuff like that. But remember, 8+ wins are rare. And I think Jeremy was pointing something out about that to me before, about
Yeah. So I
the
pointed out
ranks.
that, you know, 8 cost wins may happen more at lower ranks. Um, because people don't really know what they're doing, or they don't really care so much about their rank.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be willing to risk a little bit more to gain a little bit more.
Yep.
But once you get to the middle
Yep.
ranks, people really don't give up 8 cubes. They kind of stick to 4 at the most.
Yeah.
So don't expect big 8 cube wins all the time.
Right. And then as you get to the higher ranks, you see those retreats more. So +2 and +1 wins are going to be way more common than +4s and +8s. So that said, it's really important to know when to retreat, because if you're not retreating at the proper time, you're leaving yourself open to big slides on the rankings, and that's not something you have to put yourself through if you just follow the system. And so that said, win big, lose small. If you win big and lose small, you're going to climb, you're going to grind upwards, and you're not going to grind down. And then remember, more important than anything, it's not about beating your opponent's deck or building one to react to their plays. If you're reacting, you're losing. What you need to be doing is being aggressive. Just like poker, you want to be aggressive, but not aggressive to the point of shooting yourself in the foot or playing to a loss or a losing situation. Not that kind of aggression, but well-timed, smart aggression. When you know you have the odds, when you know everything's in your favor, when your hand is played right, be aggressive. So to that end, you don't want to build a deck to react, and you want to focus on playing your optimal hand and identifying when to retreat. If you can do that and kind of keep all these rules in mind, kind of play this strategy for success, you will grind upwards. You don't even have to use the deck I'm using. You just have to use a deck you're comfortable with, and you will grind upwards. Will you win every game? No. Are there going to be decks that will beat you most times? Sure. But if you start to identify that, you can retreat early. So, we'll get more into the poker element of these things a bit later. But next up, I believe we have a segment from Jeremy. So we'll go ahead and swap to that. We call your accessible vacation locations, right?
Yeah. Invoke's accessible vocation locations.
Yeah. So I'll let you handle that.
So this week the 4 locations that we're covering are Ego, Mindscape, Weird World, and Space Throne. So Ego plays your hand for you. So it's basically auto game. Mindscape swaps your hand before turn 6. Weird World, that's hard to say, plays from each other's deck. So like you play from your opponent's deck, they play from your deck, which plays well into the last segment that Smokey just did. We'll talk about that when we get to that. And then Space Throne allows only 1 card to be played here.
No, to occupy it, I think. It's not even just played. You can't even have more than 1 card there.
Yeah. It can only have 1. Yeah, you're right. It's occupied by only 1 card for each player. You're correct. So I think Ego is pretty self-explanatory. It's actually great for accessibility because you can just play for you. Although you're not likely to win because the AI is not the smartest.
And unlike Agatha, it's playing for both sides.
Yes. So like you're more likely to get like a draw or a loss.
Yeah.
Depending on the deck you're facing. Like if you're playing the same deck, it's probably going to be a draw. But if they play like high power cards, you're probably going to get a loss.
Yeah, it won't.
Not easy to win an auto game.
Yeah.
You basically got to play the meta, I think, in order to win that. Like the meta deck.
I think I've won 1 Agatha game ever where I got her randomly from like one of those weird locations that adds a card,
I've only had one egg at the game and I lost. Um, so I mean, I think that's ego and it's like there's nothing more to say there. It
Yeah.
plays the game for you. It sucks when it appears.
Definitely a
'Cause,
good time to retreat if you see it. Like, fuck that. Especially if the other guy
yeah,
snaps. It's like, okay, you be risky. I'm out.
unless you're just literally like you just want to play,
Yeah, just to see what
but
happens. Yeah.
yeah, but I would recommend retreating. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of Mindscape, swapping your hands in turn six. Um, I personally don't have much of a problem with this one because I tend to play very aggressive and don't often have a large hand left over come turn six.
I usually have an
Especially,
Infinite that shoots me in the foot.
yeah, unless you have infinite, and then you're kind of out of luck. But it works well for my one cost deck that I'm kind of
Yeah.
famous, I guess you could say, for using, at least in our
Yeah.
little circle. Um, because I literally never have a hand. Like people that say discard a card or whatever, it's like it never really affects me because I've always don't have a hand.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of the best way to avoid Mindscape, which is just play all your cards. And if you've got a hand where you can't play all your cards, like say you've got an infinite,
Right.
and you suspect that they know you have an infinite, which is
Yeah, because that's the key.
likely,
They can't play it unless they skip turn 5.
yeah. Um, so it's like if you think that they are a strategic player and know what you have for a deck, then you might want to retreat. But
Yeah.
those games tend to be more winnable because as long as you know your deck,
Yeah.
you can outduel your own deck, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, which again plays into weird world
Oh, that's a
as
retreat
well.
for me on Snap, dude.
Um, it's not so much for me because one, I'm a little more of a risky player, but also I know my deck.
Right.
Um, so particularly if I'm playing my one cost deck, I know there's not a ton of high power cards, and I know that more people tend to play high power cards like
Right.
Moon Girl, Devil Dino.
Yeah.
Like that's the deck that you see a lot of, or you see
Right.
a lot of Econ. So I
Yeah.
know that I can beat my one cost deck with other people's decks
That's
solely
fair.
because I know what's in my one cost deck and I know how to play it to win a
That's
game.
pretty good. That's pretty good.
Whereas most people don't know how to play that strategy
Yeah.
because
They really
they
don't.
don't spend the time to learn that strategy like I did.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially because it's like people look at it as being super risky to try to play like such low power cards, especially when they don't understand how to like make them all work together. Yeah.
Exactly. Like they might play they might not play Kazar, or they might have, destroyed Kazar um, before the Space Throne appeared,
Right. Right.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But because I know I have other ways to get out of it, um, like just through combinations of cards, they may not recognize. Now, this all kind of gets thrown out the window if I'm playing against somebody that is strategic, but more often than not, I'm willing to take that risk on the Space Stone
Yeah.
because again, I know my deck so well.
You mean on weird? You
Particularly,
mean on Weird World, where it swaps on Weird World?
yeah, sorry,
No
Weird
worries.
World, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I made that mistake twice.
Ah,
My
it's all good.
bad.
It's all good.
Weird World. Yeah. So again, it's all about knowing your deck and knowing the strategies that you use for your deck. It's not so much knowing the other deck because as long as you can think on your feet, so to speak, um,
Wow.
you should be able to pull out a victory there.
Wow, man.
Um, and then as for Space Throne, you can only play one card there.
Right.
That one can be tricky sometimes, especially if they snap when they see it.
Or if it's just a late
I,
reveal and you played there.
yeah. Like if it's the third location revealed and you
Yeah.
played like I don't know,
Like
a wasp
or just an
there.
Okoye. I tend to play my Okoye right.
Yeah,
That'd be bad.
or an Iceman. Then it's a retreat.
Yep.
But like again, knowing your deck, you can get around this.
100%.
Like you can lay an Infinite there if it's a late game, or you can lay a Kazar there if you got my one cost deck and buff everything else.
Namor,
So
Orca, Atuma, all those
a
Atlanteans play
lizard,
there.
a lizard would be a good
Yeah.
play there because they can't fill the spot. So he's gonna stay at a 5 cost card.
Yeah.
Um,
But the flip side is that's a low bet at 5 to win that spot if you're not able to buff them.
yeah, yeah, because they could pull a Hulk, they could pull a Infinite, they could pull really any
Even America, guaranteed turn 6 pull would beat him with no buff.
would be a loss. Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you have other ways of buffing
Yeah. Like Blue Marvel or other
Lizard in
things
that
like that. He's got an
location,
ongoing,
or
so I think, what is that, Spectrum or is she the reveal one? I can't remember, but
it would be Spectrum.
yeah. So,
Spectrum would buff that.
yeah, so you could buff.
But would it buff it enough to beat America? No,
That's
probably
the real
not.
question. Probably not. But it does
So
make
it's
the
like
Atlanteans look real strong.
it does make the Atlanteans look real strong, and like I've been decent with Kazar, which is a weird one because it's a 4/4.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I might lose that location, but all my other cards are buffed, so the other two locations will be fine.
Yeah. You know, the irony of the Space Throne is Thanos' chair. And him sitting on it, yeah, at 18, he's going to crush. Probably. But
Except for
you
Infinite.
only have, well, yeah, but you only have 8 spaces left. And 6 of them are going to be stones. So, I mean,
Which are all 1/1, so it's like,
yeah, it's kind of an irony that his own throne kind of screws him.
yeah, it kind of is. Kind of is. Um, but I mean, Heavy is the one that wears the crown, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the four locations that I quickly wanted to cover in terms of like kind of strategy to get around, or whether or not you should retreat like as soon as you see it.
Yeah.
Um, in future weeks, I would like to discuss things like Bar Sinister, the Raft, things like that.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
But we will see what the future seasons bring for new locations as well.
Yeah, and
'Cause, like this
we'll try
past
to
season we had
roll the event locations in too. I think, right? Because they're
yeah, like
weekly.
Vibranium Mine,
Yeah.
um, which I have a love hate relationship with, but I'm sure we'll talk about that at some other point. And I think we're on to the next segment, which
Yeah.
is Super Squad.
Yep. Super squads. All right. So for super squads, what we have, um, we'll talk about the framework of what we do, and then we'll talk about a couple of them, and then we'll move on to our next segment. But what the super squads you can look forward to week here is we have some things where we call things like dynamic duos. We have dynamic duos Avengers. Those are like the really high cost 2 combo cards. We have dynamic duos the Defenders, like Marvel's Defenders, right? And those are 2 combos that are mid play, lower cost. So like Storm Jessica Jones, we've talked about a lot, would be a Defenders dynamic duo. A Devil Dino Moon Girl, who we've talked about, would be like an Avengers dynamic duo because that's late game 4 and 5 cost card versus earlier game 3 and 4 cost card. So we have those, and then we also have some other ones like the Moving Co. The moving company, we have the early shift, which is like Iron Fist, Craven, Vulture, Multiple Man, Cloak, Ebony Maw, Human Torch, guys like that. And then the late shift, like Vision, the expensive card. We have things like the Garbage Gang, which is like the discard deck, Moon Knight, Swordmaster, Gambit, Ghost Rider, Morbius, Swarm, Blade, Lady Sif, stuff like that. We have a Troll deck, Korg, Debris, Yondu, Iceman, Mantis, Cable, Green Goblin, Hobgoblin. We've got Protect Your Deck, Zero, Armor, Destroyer, Cosmo. Those are ones that have like reactionary protections for your deck, either directly with armor or they remove reveals and ongoings for other locations and enemy cards. Then we have the trios, and we weren't seeing a lot of trios through Pool 3, but we're starting to see them now that people are getting more of the cards. And the trios, we call them starter dough. You have things like Odin, White Tiger, and Wong. We talked about that a little bit before with White Tiger and Wong. But if you throw Odin in there, he's going to make him do the whole thing again. And that's just all the White Tigers, and you forget it. Then there's Arnim Zola, Devil Dino, Moon Girl. You can get 2 Devil Dinos when Arnim Zola kills one of them off if you played a meta location solo. And then there's Venom, Deadpool, Carnage. That gets nasty. You start putting Deadpool back and doubling his power, doubling his power, doubling his power. That gets gross. So in this segment, we'll touch on just, 1 or 2 things other than what we've talked about. And then week to week, we'll explore those more thoroughly. This week, not so much because we had a whole new set of pool cards, and those were really interesting. And we spent a lot of time discussing those cards. So, but one of the ones we'll talk about is the Sunspot Infinite, because we've talked about that a little bit. That combo is really strong, even though Sunspot's a 1-cost card, because, you skip turn 5 to play the Infinite. That makes him at least a 6 with the Sunspot, because you get the energy not spent as his power. Let's see. I think what's one of the combos you consider? I think like Khazar and Mystique. That could be a good one. That I could see you using.
Yeah,
Because
I
she
also
copies the
use,
ability of the last card, right? So, or the ongoing of the last card. Khazar's ongoing is
yeah.
buff-tastic. So if you had a Mystique, right?
Again, I could see out of the new cards, I could see using the Luke Cage Maria Hill combo for me. Um,
I'll put that in.
Moon Girl Devil Dino is another one that you see a lot. You know, although there are ways to beat it now, so I've kind of moved away from that deck. Um, I really like um, putting like Squirrel Girl in my 1-cost deck with Kazar because you get 3 cards for the cost of 1, and all 3 of them get buffed. Yes, it's only a +1, but again, as we discussed earlier, I really like my 1-cost deck.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you Okoye'd the Squirrel Girl instead of drawing it, you could get even more value.
yeah. Um,
Not necessarily that you play that way, but that's just an idea.
yes. One 2-cost card that I do throw in that deck, kind of like a buffer, is like Mr. Fantastic, because I can increase like if I always play him in the middle, so he always increases the power of left and right by 2. Um,
Yeah,
but that's not really related to the combos. It's just like it's a nice little buffer play for my
yeah.
one
It's
cost
literally
deck.
like Mr. Fantastic plus anyone kind of thing.
But I may remove him and put Okoye because that would be a pretty nasty
Yeah, because
little
you're buffing your whole deck versus buffing just 4 extra points.
location.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Okoye is already a 2 power play, so you're really getting 4 extra points. Okoye is giving you up to 8 extra points, I think, if you get her early. So that is pretty impressive. And then
Yeah.
every every week we'll do like a deck we cover in this section too during Super Squads. That's kind of like where we get like the starter does and just some things you can combine. But this week it's going to be a light one. And that's going to be it for Super Squads, just because we talked so much about cards in Weekly Bugle. But next up, we're going to be talking about the way the poker mentality plays into the game here. So stay tuned for that. So for superhero system, we're going to talk about how the game is a lot like poker in a lot of ways. So it's named because if you weren't into poker as card games go, because I know we talked about like Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic and Pokemon and stuff like that, but we never really talked about poker, where a lot of this all kind of comes from, with trading card games, where a lot of
At
the
least the
strategy,
mental
yeah,
aspect of it.
yeah, exactly, the mental aspect of it. And so I find that with this game, and to dance back on that, the Super System is a two-book series by Doyle Brunson, one of the legends of poker of all time, and it's like the basis for a lot of people's poker game. They study that before they study anything else, and to improve their game, kind of thing. So we thought it'd be cool to give a nod to that, and we call this the superhero system. So we're going to talk a little bit about how poker mentality plays into this game, and we talked a little bit about it with snapping and knowing when to hold, when to fold, um, and when to push, and bet, and all that. But I think one of the important elements of it that we touched on but didn't really get into too deeply is drawing out versus a made hand. So a made hand is when you have the cards to start the game that give you the absolute best start you could possibly have from your deck. So for me, with an Infinite deck, that would be having Infinite, Jess Jones, and Storm to start, and drawing Sunspot on turn one. But having Storm and Jess Jones and Infinite in hand to start the game is a made hand. If you have a made hand, that's a bet. But if you don't have a made hand, then you're doing what's called drawing out. And if you're drawing out, you're playing odds that are less favorable, right? You have to, like we talked about, know how many cards are in your deck, how many cards remaining to the card you're going to draw. That's something you have to do when you play Jubilee as well. And you can make a deck, though, that could insulate against needing a made hand. Jeremy's talked about that a little bit with the Khazar deck. His Khazar one-cost deck is an insulator against a made hand, I think. You want to talk about how that works a little bit? Because you don't necessarily have to draw the exact right cards. It's just so many cards you could play at any situation, right?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I was muted, so I was trying to rush to unmute myself.
No
Um,
worries.
yeah. So with my Khazar deck, is like I do have a made hand, but I don't need the made hand to win it. Um, so like my made hand would be like Khazar and anything, basically. Like having Khazar in my hand, I know that I'm gonna be able to buff everything.
Yeah, so
Uh,
a one card made hand insulates pretty well against having to draw specific cards. Yeah,
um,
that's pretty good as far as that goes.
but the beautiful thing about my one cost deck is it doesn't matter if I draw Khazar right away because I know that like I know what's in my deck being all low cost cards, um, that depending on the locations I can kind of um, isolate and just wait to get Khazar in place of you know
Do you have any other cards you would like use to help insulate against that? Not getting Khazar? Like, I mean, I know like a blue Marvel buffs everything one, but do you have any cards that are like that like can kind of give you some Khazar
um
mojo if you don't have Khazar going?
I'm just trying to think of what. Oh, I mean, I have Spectrum, which buffs all ongoing.
Yeah.
Um, she's a 6 cost card, so it's less of a
Yeah, that's like Blue Marvel
Um,
coming in to buff everything at the end.
I also have Hawkeye, which will buff himself. I have Ant-Man, which will buff himself as long as I have three or more cards at a location.
Right, or like Wolfsbane, who buffs based on more cards played at a location. So like
Yeah,
these cards
yeah.
will buff themselves without that extra one from Kazar enough that like Kazar is just like a cheap blue marvel for you. But if you don't get him, it might not break you.
Uh,
That's actually kind of cool. So yeah, definitely there's ways to insulate against that. I'd say
So
for
I have
sure.
a lot of cards that like will buff themselves, but also be buffed
Yeah.
by Kazar.
Okay. Cause see, like now on the flip side of that, for me, I have to have the main hand, but I have small backups and installations against it. So like if I don't draw Jess Jones, but I draw Jubilee, and then I know the odds. So if I have a lot of low cost cards in my hand, didn't get my Infinite, I have a better chance because I play the Jubilee with low cost cards in my hand. Depending on the turn, I have a better chance of getting a high cost card played, and sometimes 75% chance to get a card over 10 is enough for me to be like, okay, that's still I'll go with it, especially if there's no snap, or if only if one of us is snapped and snapped late, like we snapping right when I'm playing Jubilee or something like that. Then okay, I'll wait and see what she does. Um, but if I don't get her or Jess Jones, I don't have a lot of options to make my turn 4 work enough for me with Storm. And similarly, if I don't get Infinite, I have things that can weather it. I've got, America's going to draw out at the end regardless. I've got Hulk, I've got Vision, but that might not be enough, compared to that 20 that I was relying on. And if I have to play Vision, and if I have to do movement stuff and play not Infinite turn 6, then I'm also undercutting Sunspot if I'd already played him. So for me, a made hand really like guarantees victory. But if I don't get it, I kind of have to retreat more often. So for like you, it sounds like you could, have like more chances to kind of see what happens, but also
Yeah,
like have to still time it for like you don't want to lose too many cubes. So like if they
I
snap
can
later than
game on
early,
a little longer. Yeah, I can risk it a little bit longer
yeah,
than most could.
yeah. And I'd say that like kind of goes back to when I was talking about strategy for success. If like you don't get your draw, don't try to draw out. But if you've got a deck that insulates enough, you could try to draw out one card longer or something like that if you feel like it's better than a coin flip, like way better than a coin flip. But if it's a coin flip, get the fuck out. Um, that said, I think the snap can definitely be used as a strategic move because of stuff like that. So snapping earlier will cost you more cubes quicker. It still maxes out at 8 or 4, depending on if one or two snapped, but or one or both players snapped. But um, you kind of if you can see what they've done, and this is where like knowing more than just your deck comes in handy. If you can know the the kind of basics of other decks, which is why this dynamic duos and sort of stuff and data comes in handy, and it will be available in a spreadsheet that you guys can use. That will also have a template to help you keep track of your wins and losses, and we will have the link for that in comments. One of my mods is working on the finishing touches on that right now, and but that will have updated info all the time of the duos and trios and all that kind of stuff that you got to look out for to kind of help you identify if they play one card, what you might see later. And so if you can get to that point where you can identify other decks, that's when you can start bluffing people off of games, in addition to just snapping people off when you're going to win. But also knowing when snapping might get you 1 cube instead of 2 because you're confident they're going to lose, they're not going to snap. Maybe just let it go so you can get 2 instead of 1. So sometimes you got to understand what's going on in your opponent's head, and that's when knowing their deck comes in handy. And that's when you can start like playing it at both ends and really start climbing, I feel. Any thoughts on snapping as a strategic move to bluff or like force retreats when you think they might be trying to draw out on a turn 6 or anything like that?
I mean, I don't do it very often because I think it's risky.
The bluff or just snapping?
Bluffing,
Yeah, I don't do
bluffing.
it too often either, but if I can tell they absolutely don't have what they have and my hand played out like I had the thing I don't, then I might. Especially if they're thinking for a very long time.
Um, I can see benefits to it, but I just don't often do it um, because I'm trying to not lose
But the
like
flip
a
side
lot
would
of
be you
cubes.
could like recognize them though, right? And kind of like know when someone's trying to bullshit you.
Um, yeah, I mean, depends on like when they snap. So like if they snap like turn one before anything's ever laid, then I'm more willing to be like, oh, okay, you don't really know what you're doing.
See, the
But if
funny
they
thing for me is because I need made hand, I see that as well. Fuck it, I don't care that much to find out.
and again because I'm playing a card that's a little more
Exactly.
flexible, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um,
That lets you call people's bluffs a little bit more early. So that's actually kind of cool.
yeah, like I literally just had a guy snap before anything was laid. I'm playing as we're recording, so
This guy,
it's
he said he was addicted at the first segment. He is. But yeah,
I wasn't lying.
yeah. So I mean, I think you can use snapping as a means to force retreats when you're not bluffing too. So I mean, when you've got like a win, but you don't want to let them draw out because you know that the deck they're playing might have something that can beat you that they just probably don't have in their hand yet. You could try to just snap then and be like, get the fuck off of here if you don't have the nuts, you know? And they might not have the nuts if like you don't see one of those early combos while identifying that they need to be um, you know play. So I guess what I'm saying is if you see someone like snap early like you're saying, it's one thing, but if you snap early, you could push them off, so you might be better off like knowing when to force a retreat into like a situation where you don't want them to draw out versus try to force a retreat early. I think that's what I was getting at. But I think that's pretty much our superhero system for week one. That'll give kind of an overview, and then we'll start talking about more specifics. Hopefully, having like maybe even like guests come on and talk about it. That's definitely one of our aims, is to talk this kind of stuff with guests going forward, so it won't just be us and our thoughts. But for week one, that's our superhero system on the mental and poker elements of the game. It's got very much like the whole drawn out on like the turn and the river elements of Hold'em, and you can see what someone's played a bit or what's in their hand, kind of thing of stud. So it's definitely got some of the game elements as well as the mental elements, and this is the segment we'll discuss them in going forward. Um, but for the end of the show, for the last sections, for the last few segments, um, this is where we get the community involved. Aside from just guest appearances and things like that. So if you have like a screen grab you want to get in here, if you've got a deck you think's cool and you want us to talk about, if you got a clip from a stream that you thought was dope and you want us to include, then drop it. Drop a line in our email or on our socials. Our email is snapverse616 at gmail. Hit us up. Hit us up in the comments, even whatever. We will try to use your clips and give you a shout out in the credits. So for the first bit, we're going to do our screen grabs of the week, and these are games that Jeremy and I have played that we thought were interesting for some reason or another, and we're going to talk about those real quick, and then we'll get to some stuff from you guys. All right, so this first one, this was a game I played where I had a Sinister London, which was plays a card at another location, and so I played Carnage there, who ate a bunch of cards I'd already played, and then I played Iron Man, and he copied himself. So I've got like a 30, a 42, and so his biggest was the middle at Nidavellir, and that's where he dropped his Infinite, and he copied his Infinite from Sinister London, and I Devil Dino'd. Nothing of mine was that big on its own, but Iron Man came in there swinging, and Infinite didn't even land on the one that he could beat, so I ended up sweeping. I thought that was pretty funny. And then the second one here is a game I played where dude tried to Shang-Chi my Devil Dino, but he'd already played Armor. And so it's kind of that's a note to like you gotta remember the order you're playing cards in, and you can't just like knee jerk react like with a card to where like you should play it from just that turn's perspective, because if you're not thinking about that card in the larger sense, you're gonna end up making a mistake like that where you try to Shang-Chi a Devil Dino who's protected by your own armor card. So that did not go well for him, and there was only 2 locations to play at. I question his lack of taking Nightcrawler and just shoving them at Sanctum Sanctorum. But considering the armor Shang-Chi play, I think this was potentially an inexperienced player I was playing. This was a bit ago, before I was even playing the Infinite deck, so I could see it. I was a bit lower ranked then. And so basically this player just made a couple mistakes, didn't really understand what was happening, and only had a couple places to play. He could have taken a location with that Nightcrawler. Had he done that, the tie at Shuri's lab, and the 1 win still wouldn't have been enough for him, because I would have won by more at the location I won at, which is why I won with the double tie. But it's just weird to me that he didn't try to win Sanctum Sanctorum with Nightcrawler at all, considering he had one. And then my final one, I think it's my final one. No, it's my this one. This one was just one where I got knocked out at a floodplain, but I'd already put a Devil Dino, and he was bigger, so they tried to Magneto pull me, and it didn't work. They still lost the floodplain, and then Magneto put all my biggest stuff right on top of him, and that was that. Then this one, this is we called this one Jurassic Park, and it's funny because Jeremy's is a Jurassic Park too. He's got one. We both had Jurassic Parks, and this one I've got a Sinister London and a Danger Room. But the thing is, Danger Room only kills cards on a 25% chance that are played there, not moved there, not copied there, played there. So I just played a bunch of cards at Sinister London that were big and stuff, and next thing I know, I cloned my Devil Dino with Moon Girl, played both of them at Sinister London, and one of them each cloned to the other locations, and it was just bam, 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 and tied at Necrotia, won the other 2. That's a sweep. So that was pretty sweet, and my Devil Dino was 15, so I had like 30 at Sinister London just on those alone or something, so nasty. And then he had a Black Panther that he copied, and with like an Arnim Zola or something like that. Or no, he just copied it with Sinister London. Had he done it with the Arnim Zola, he might have beat me, but didn't, so it is what it is. Which leads us to Jeremy's Jurassic Park.
This is my 4 dinos, right?
Yeah. Dude
yeah.
tried to Odin on you.
Yeah, that didn't work. That didn't work at all. I kind of just dominated him with a number of dinos.
Yeah, all worth I think 16 or 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
Gross.
the whole Moon Girl twice, and then Devil Dino. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you got a handful of Iron Men who are just like, put me in, coach, and you're like, no, 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 no. This is Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
movie.
No,
Different movie.
no
Get the
use
fuck out.
you Iron Man. No EU alive.
Yeah, like we need Sam Neill, okay? We don't need Tony Stark. We need Jeff Goldblum. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, that was nasty. You won fucking 44-39 on his biggest one, and then 38-6, and then lost 7-6 on the other. So I mean, that was nasty. You really got the Devil Dinos going there. So then this last one here is one where you had like all the Hawkeyes at cloning vats with a Khazar.
Oh yeah, that one was a very interesting strategic play because as each time you play a Hawkeye, as long as you play a card their next turn, right, he gets
Yeah,
buffed. So each one of them got buffed each turn because I kept playing them there the next turn. So each one of them ended up being what plus like a 3 power instead of a 1 power.
it looks like they're all
So
like 5.
because I also waited Gazar, right?
Yeah, and he cloned himself, so you had two
Yeah.
Khazars, so they all ended up being 5s. And you ended up winning the cloning vats 19-6. There was a Sanctum Sanctorum in the middle. No one played a movement card. No one played anything that could go there. And the last one was the miniaturized lab, and you can't play cards there for like part of the game. And he had like a Shang-Chi for his last card, thinking you were going to come in swinging something big, and you had like this little low cost card thing going on, and Uatu the Watcher comes in like, nah, I'm actually the last card. Cheers, bub. And you won 15-9 there. That's pretty nasty. You ended up taking 4 cubes on that one. And that go ahead.
That's part of the reason why I like the one cost deck because I do have the cards that will buff themselves.
Yeah.
So when I get a location like that, I
Yeah.
can I can load up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
And
such a
definitely did.
versatile deck that no one ever thinks of.
Yep. And I see in this iteration of it, you had a Mr. Fantastic, a Sentinel, a Star Lord, and a Spectrum in your hand still. So that's cool. And you didn't need the Spectrum on that because limited play space necessitated that Khazar cloning. So that's pretty cool.
I mean, I very rarely actually play Spectrum.
Yeah. Well, if you very rarely play Spectrum, I would consider replacing Spectrum with America Chavez just to increase your draws from turn 1 through 5. Just chucking that out there.
That wouldn't be a bad replacement.
I mean, honestly, because if you're not playing that card, then it's just taking up space in your draws. So if you put a Chavez in instead, then you're guaranteed that on turn 6. Gives you a turn 1 through 5 better odds on the stuff you really want, which is Khazar. So that gives you better odds on Khazar. I would rock that if I was you. I would consider that.
I just played a Daredevil.
But yeah, that's the end of our screen grabs. So next we're going to bring up some community decks and talk about those. So we will be right back with that. All right, so in this segment, we're gonna always be talking about and showing off community decks. The first one is from another streamer, Oro, and they popped in the stream one day and tried to help me learn how to play this deck, and I gave it a whirl, and I had mixed results, mostly because I was trying to learn it while playing it on stream with someone trying to direct me with that slight delay. So it was a complicated situation. If I was wanting to give it more of a go, after like say if I could make it to 100 and then just kind of like play around with decks, I would try to learn this one more because that Leech Professor X Gamora combo looks pretty nasty. But you're going to get Quicksilver in your hand to start. You're going to be able to steal something of theirs with Cable. That gives them one less card. What if you steal their big power card or something crucial? Daredevil will let you see what they're doing turn 5. Lizard's just a powerful, low-cost 2 card. And if you put down Enchantress, he can't be weakened. And then you've got a Cosmo there to remove all the yawn reveals. Those won't happen anymore. Hulkbuster to clear up some space on your side if you got a lot of low-cost ones played early. A Shang-Chi in case you need to destroy something big. There's the White Queen, which doesn't steal like Cable, but will copy a card from your opponent. Leech, though, he removes all the abilities your opponent has on the cards in their hand. He's played on turn 5. He's not super powerful, but if they were relying on like some big ass fucking power move on turn 6 from their card, they're fucked. And then the Daredevil allows Gamora to hit for 12 consistently on turn 5, or allow Professor X to lock down a location on turn 5. So it's got some use. I wasn't having the luck with it when I was trying it on stream. What are your thoughts on this deck?
Again, it's not really my style. Um, I personally don't like that they uh, use Lizard. I think Lizard is a almost useless card because it loses its power when they fill a location.
Right.
Um, so I would personally replace Lizard with something else. I don't know what off the top of my head. Maybe a Domino or something.
Fair.
Um,
The only issue with Domino is you have a lot of powerful 2-cost cards you wouldn't be able to draw.
yeah. Okay, Domino, maybe a Shabbat. No, because you've got some I don't know. I would replace Lizard. I don't know with what yet, but I would replace Lizard.
I think
Um,
the reason he works is because with Professor X you can lock a spot down, you know?
yeah, that is true.
But
Um,
it is risky, but I think that makes like a trio out of Professor X, Daredevil, and Lizard, kind of in that case. Like if you draw
yeah,
those
that
three, you
was
know you got
a
at
pretty
least
brutal
one spot
trio.
big. In
That is a
fact,
pretty brutal trio.
yeah, in fact, if you throw Gamora in with them, you've got a Daredevil that lets you know when to Prof X so that you can lock one down for Lizard. Then you've got Gamora who can play on turn 6, and you have 50-50 odds of making her a 12. And I feel like in most of those, it's not even like 50-50 because they're going to like. It's going to be pretty obvious once you've locked down Professor X and made them go, oh shit. It's going to be pretty obvious which one they're going to have to double down on if they don't retreat straight up, you know? So I think that makes
I've had
Gamora kind of
bad luck.
obvious.
I've just had bad luck playing that kind of deck, so I'm like
Yeah,
hesitant to.
yeah. And like I said, I had mixed results, but I think if I put the time in to really understand the synergy of it, I might be able to do some damage with it. But I know Oro has. I haven't. Our next deck up is from another streamer we know, Hell Hero. And this is the deck he was playing on stream when we were hanging out and talking. And it was, I think, one day after stream, we gave him some love. We gave him a raid, and we were hanging out talking Marvel Snap as we do. And so I'll put up his deck here. Now, he rocks an Elektra, Yondu, Bucky Barnes, Carnage, Mojo, Killmonger, Deathlock, Maximus, Shang-Chi, Iron Man, Sarah, and I have Hela in there, but it's a placeholder for Death. The real intended final card is Death, so you kind of got to bear that in mind. Hela has a similar effect for a lot less power and such. So, the way Death works is she brings back everything you discarded, and then she costs less for everything that was discarded or something like that. Anyway, the intended card is supposed to be death, but I don't have that, so I put Hella in because that's the closest substitute. He was saying, but it's interesting because you've got some destruction, proactive, and then reactive. You've got your Bucky and whatnot and Carnage that you're going to turn into stuff. Then you've got your Killmonger and Shang-Chi for that reactive destruction. Remove their low-cost cards, remove that one high-cost card or a couple high-cost cards at the same location. You've got Maximus that forces them to draw, which might not be what they want to do at that moment. But it also gives you 7 power for only 3 cost, so that's pretty wicked right there. Then Sarah obviously makes your last turn cheaper, and so you can get a lot of like those leftover cards in there real quick that you weren't able to cast before maybe. It also makes like Bucky a 1 cost, Carnage a 1 cost, etc., etc. Mojo, he gets a +6 if both locations are filled +4. So this one, I feel like if you were facing this with your 1 cost crew, you'd be like, deuces, bitch! Because it looks pretty nasty against what you rock.
Yeah, discard decks are kind of rough for me, honestly.
Yeah, well, it's not all just discards. He's got a lot of kill and all that, and what with the Deathlock Bucky Carnage situation. But I feel like the Mojo with the +6, when you're gonna have to probably fill a side, could like kind of fuck with you. Like, oh, where am I gonna? Shit, I might not want to fill that one first. It might make you think, or it might at least it might be like sheepdogging, right? He might be like pushing you into an area and going, ha ha, you're in the corral now, sucker. You didn't know it, but you're fenced in, bitch. You know what I mean? Like he might be coming around trying to lock you into something. Yeah. So I mean, I could definitely see the value in this deck, and he was crushing with it when I was watching him. That Killmonger would be nasty, to the 1 costs. And Shang-Chi can be nasty in the late area. Yondu removes a card straight up, so like he's just yanking cards out of your deck like all over the place and making life difficult. And then that Iron Man sitting there just in case stuff goes tits up. And then every card you destroyed, I believe, or whatever, and discarded or whatever, death just pulls him back. So like all that shit you went, it just comes back. And she's super powerful. She's like a 14 or something. So nasty. Now I put Hella in as a substitute again, but yeah. So that's a pretty nasty deck. So yeah. Again, if you have a deck you would like to see on here, especially if you want to see it done without like a substitute card, submit a screenie that looks about like this, or submit the whole screenie. I'll crop it, don't matter, whatever. But submit your decks to our email, snapverse616@gmail.com. And if you submit your decks there, we will feature them on stream. You don't have to be a streamer. That's not a requirement. But if you have a deck we'd like to talk about, or like us to talk about, et cetera, or if you are a streamer and would like to talk about your deck and be a guest on this segment, definitely let us know in the comments, and we will try to make that happen. All right, so our next segment and our last segment to cap it off is the most fun one. It's community clip show crossover. So we're going to give you a little fun from another streamer, and in the future, if you have clips and you stream, please again submit them, and we'd love to include them in this segment. All right, so this first clip, and it's the only one for this week, and if you want to submit some, please do if you're a streamer. But this clip is from Brown Berserker, and it's a fun one.
Oh, I forgot about the double reveal.
Ooh.
Oh my god! I'm out. I forgot.
Oh.
I'm out.
I think we've all done that. If we've got a hobgoblin or a
Dude,
goblin,
I'm
then
hurt.
double
I can't play
reveal
hob.
ourselves.
I can't play hobgoblin. I can't.
Yeah,
I
I've
can't.
definitely done
I
that.
can't.
It's not a fun feeling, that's for sure.
I need that card out of my deck. I need that freaking card out of my deck. Oh my god.
But yeah, that's gonna be that for this week. If you want to be a guest, or if you want to have your decks, or if you want to have your clips, please submit them either to the Gmail or stop by streams. We will definitely not be running this length every episode. Anytime they add new pools of cards, which is about once a month, this will be the big episode that has all the cards in it, because we want to make sure that we do the due diligence and give you all the information. You can pause at all the different card screens to get the information. We will every week make sure we put in the timestamps at the different segments so that you can digest the content in the way you want to digest the content, and get the most out of it for your time. And to that ends, we will see you guys next week, next Friday. And any last words you got there, bud?
No, just I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and see you again next week.
Thank you all for watching, and cheers. Where each deck fitted, even though I'm prone to snap that. Known to be so quick-witted, you sound Drax when you snap back. When everyone knows it rains Jess Jones on the tap mat. Think your boss sings the flow, administer vision if you're not at the spot I blow with a skip track. You tried to blow back the roof, so my armor said I will skip that. Jubilee still got a +1, Okoye said she's with that. Cause the Nightman cometh, Iceman stunneth, while the Hulkman smashing America ass who done it? Snapverse 616. Snapverse 616. Snapverse 616. Snapverse 616. Then Invoke drops Kazar cause he's Mr. Fantastic. His spectrum of skills are what let me handle this rap shit. His puff up, his clutch up, smokes 3 sacks like it's magic. But it's a Wolfsbane classic. You thought your full moon's Jurassic, but it's actually tragic. If I'm a silver fox with the flippity yippity yapping, he's quick like a rabbit. His girls unfurling squirrels while his flirkins hurling antics. Invoke the hawk-eyed watcher who ought to see through your static.